Welcome to So Easy. Today we're going to be making one of these. Doesn't look like very much, but it's actually very interesting and useful. This is going to be a belt loop. So on the side of where you have a dress, typically a dress, you'll have little loops of fabric like this of thread that come out from the side seam, and this is where if you have a belt on your dress, the belt hangs in these loops on the side, so if it should come undone, it won't fall off. It's also useful when you hang the dress in your wardrobe, you keep the belt through the little loops on the waist. But I'm going to show you today how we can make these. You can sort of crochet them with a needle and thread, but that seems a bit unnecessarily lengthy to me. I always like the quick and easy method, so we're going to make this little piece of thread on our sewing machine. In order to make it, we need to start off with a book and some thread. So I've got my thread here, and I'm just going to use the edge of the book here and wrap the thread around 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm going to snip that off. Now I'm going to just gently push these threads off the edge of the book, hold them all together, and end up with a great big loop of thread. Now of course this end where we started and stopped, we have a couple of open ends, so I'm just going to tie a knot just there. Just hold those in place. Okay, so we've now got our thread with the loop and the knot at one end. That's going to be our back, and we have loops down at the other end and 8 pieces of thread. So now I'll take this over to this sewing machine, and we need to use a medium zigzag stitch. On my machine that's a stitch width of 4. You might need to just check with yours to see what seems right for you, and maybe a little bit of trial and error involved to make sure you get it right. So see you over at the machine. So I've got my machine set up for the medium zigzag. I've got my loops of thread. I've got the piece with the knot in my fingers here, which I'm going to hold at the back. I'm just going to slide that under the centre of the presser foot and put the presser foot down. So I've got my threads here now at the sewing machine. I've got my knot at the back there. I'm just going to slide this under the presser foot with my knot at the back and make sure that my threads are under the centre of this presser foot just here. I'm going to make sure that I've got enough at the back for me to be able to grab hold of, because your feed dogs probably aren't going to feed this thread through, so you'll need to pull it as your machine sews. So let's start with our zigzag stitch. I'm going to go nice and steady. I'm going to hold the threads taut as I go and make sure they stay under the centre of the presser foot, so the zigzag is going to fall either side of our line of threads. Okay, so at the other side, let's trim. So here's my little thread chain now sewn, and that's just as it's come straight out the sewing machine, and trimmed off the ends, still a bit raggedy, but I've got myself one of these upholstery needles which has a large eye, and I'm just going to feed this through. We've got our knot at the other end, but you see where we have this part here that isn't sewn, because that's where I was holding it when I pulled it through the machine. So I'm just going to knot off just here where those zigzag stitches have started, and then I'll be able to sew with this, and I can sew it into the side seam of an existing garment and use it as a belt loop, or we can also add it in during the point of construction, and I'll do that now. So I've got a couple of pieces of fabric which are going to represent the side seam of our dress that we're sewing, and I want to just estimate now how long our belt loop would be, and of course that depends really on how wide your belt is and how much ease you want to have in it. But remember that it's going to be caught in the seam allowance, so say my seam goes here to here, maybe I want around that much. Obviously it's up to you to decide, and it needs to go between our layers. So I'm just going to pop that here. I've got my knot at the top. That's going to go here, and I'll just place my fabric on top. It's going to be a little bit fiddly, I think, but I can always pin that if I need to. And now I'm just going to run it through the sewing machine and sew my seam allowance, and the thread chain is going to be caught in the seam allowance. I can feel the little ridge where the thread chain is, and when I get to this point I'm just going to go backwards and forwards with my seam a little bit just to make sure that that's going to be really caught in there. Okay, time to sew. And now the little thread belt loop is completed. So that wasn't too difficult. I think it looks really quite nice and professional to have something like that on the side of your garment. Makes it look less homemade, more couture and handmade, I think. So thank you very much for following along, and I hope to see you over again at Sew So Easy for more simple and quick and easy sewing tips.